He wasn't ready for the way you came in, not because you were too much, but because you carried a kind of love that demanded truth. And truth shakes the ground beneath those who've built their worth on survival, not surrender. You didn't walk in quietly. Your energy arrived like thunder, waking something in him that had been numb for far too long. You didn't ask for space, you became the space. The place where masks fell and armor cracked. At first, he mistook the intensity for danger. He didn't know love could look like fire and feel like freedom all at once. He called it chaos. But what he was really facing was everything in him that wasn't ready to receive what was real. You didn't offer soft illusions. You offered raw presence. You saw him beyond the charm, the silence, the walls. And that level of sight, it terrified him. Not because it hurt, but because it healed. There's a part of him that still trembles at how you loved without conditions. How your energy didn't bend to please him. It stood tall in sacred knowing. You were never asking to be chosen. You were revealing what real love requires. And that requirement? It was the storm, not a destruction, but a holy disruption. A clearing out of everything shallow. You didn't break him. You broke what kept him from becoming. He couldn't see it then. He only felt the intensity, the pull, the deep aching confrontation with his own limitations. But that confrontation was a gift. You didn't abandon him. You invited him to rise. You see, real love doesn't soothe the ego. It awakens the soul. And you, beloved, were the awakening, the divine interruption, the lesson dressed in grace and wildfire. He'll never admit it out loud, not yet, but your absence is louder than your presence ever was. Not because you left with noise, but because you left with your essence intact, and he still feels it. When he lies awake, when the world goes quiet, he remembers the way your energy moved through a room. He remembers your strength, your eyes, the way your silence spoke louder than any apology he couldn't give. You were the storm that didn't destroy, but rebuilt. The one that left him different, changed, marked by something he couldn't fully hold but could never truly forget. You didn't just love him, you revealed him. Now he walks through life measuring every connection against the impact of yours. Not by comparison, but by resonance. And nothing has echoed quite like you. Because you weren't an echo. You were the sound before sound. He sees glimpses of you in the women he meets, in the songs that play, in the timing of the universe. But nothing fits quite the same. Because what you offered wasn't just love. It was awakening wrapped in fire. And that fire is sacred. It taught him that real love is not comfort. It's clarity, not possession, but presence, not noise, but knowing. And even though he ran from it, it still follows him like a promise. You didn't wait for him to understand. You moved, you grew, you transformed. And your transformation is the very energy that haunts his shadow and heals his future all at once. He will remember you for the rest of his life. Not as a regret, but as the moment his soul was asked to expand. You were the divine storm, and in that storm, he learned what love really means. So if you ever wonder whether it mattered, know this. It did. You weren't just a lesson. You were the doorway, the turning point, the mirror, the flame, the truth that refused to be watered down. You didn't lose him, you led him. And now, whether he follows that path or not, he walks in the afterglow of what your presence awakened. And that kind of impact, that kind of love, it never disappears, absolutely. Here's the next continuation of this angelic, emotionally charged message. 20 brand new paragraphs designed to remain captivating, prophetic, and intimate. It continues the story of her divine impact and the quiet transformation unfolding within him. He carries it now quietly, like a sacred scar no one else can see. Not a wound, but a mark. Something in him shifted the moment you stopped softening your voice to be understood. And instead, spoke with soul to be felt. He used to believe love was about safety, about control, but you taught him that love was about surrender, about facing what hurts, not escaping it. And now he's wrestling with everything you made him feel because it was real. Others have come since you, but their presence fades quickly because no one else dared to challenge him with love. No one else left him better by leaving. You did both. You shook him and steadied him in one breath. He thought passion meant comfort, but now he knows passion means presence. You didn't just stir his heart, you confronted it. You didn't just love his light, you stood with his shadows. That kind of love can't be replaced. Sometimes he wishes he could go back, not to change the outcome, but to say what he never had the courage to voice. Not, "I love you," but, "I wasn't ready for someone like you." And even now, he still isn't sure he is. You were never chaotic. You were catalytic. You were the shift, not the storm. But to someone who's never met depth, depth feels like drowning. And he mistook the healing as hurt because he hadn't yet learned how to hold peace. He didn't realize that real love would ask him to grow, to choose, to rise. And you, beloved, didn't come to entertain him. You came to evolve him. That's why your love felt like fire, because it was purifying. Now he looks at the version of himself he became after you, and quietly thanks the storm, because without it, he never would have known the sky was even there. You cracked open the world. He built to survive and showed him how to live. He watches your journey now, even from afar, the glow, the grace, the rise. And while he may never say it, he knows. He lost more than a person. He lost the one who knew his soul before he knew his worth. But even in that loss, you left him with something eternal. The seed. The seed of what love really means. And though it hasn't bloomed yet, it's still there. Waiting, quiet, rooted in everything you awakened. He sees love differently now. Not as possession, but as presence. Not as someone to fix him, but someone who mirrors him. And you, without ever trying, became the clearest reflection of who he could be. Sometimes he wonders if he ever really knew you. But the truth is, you knew him better than he knew himself. And that knowledge wasn't just intimate, it was divine. A knowing that breaks and blesses at the same time. You were the one who didn't flinch, who didn't run, who didn't dilute your love to make it easier to swallow. And now, in your absence, he sees the strength in that. Because your love wasn't fragile, it was foundational. He hears your voice in the moments he used to drown in silence. He remembers your eyes when he's asked to face his own reflection. And sometimes he closes his eyes and pretends he's back in the presence of someone who actually saw him. But pretending isn't enough anymore. He's tired of illusions, and your love ruined him for shallow things. You created a hunger in him for honesty, for energy that doesn't lie, for a heart that doesn't hide behind pride. And so his soul keeps circling back, not because he's stuck, but because he's called. To revisit the places where he first met himself in your eyes. To confront the love that didn't let him stay small. You didn't just teach him about love, you taught him about truth. And that truth still walks with him, through relationships, through failures, through longing. He may forget your voice, but he'll never unfeel your impact. He may never return in the way you once dreamed, but he is returning in the way that matters, through the slow, painful unraveling of all that he isn't, so that one day he might finally meet who he was always meant to be. And when he does, if he does, he'll know that the storm was never the end. It was the beginning. And you weren't the lesson, you were the revelation. He never expected your silence to be louder than your presence. But now in the space you left behind, he hears everything. The way you used to say his name, the way your energy filled the room before your words even arrived. Each day he walks past places where your essence still lingers. Not because you're physically there, but because you imprinted the moment. Your love had gravity, it changed the air, and he breathes differently now. The people around him don't understand his quiet stares or sudden disinterest. But that's because they didn't. Witness the collision, the soul quake, the sacred confrontation of a man meeting real love and running from it. What he once called too intense, he now calls irreplaceable. What he once feared, he now aches for. The fire you brought didn't burn him, it refined him. And now that he walks through cold, empty spaces, he misses the warmth. You weren't demanding. You were divine. You didn't want control, you wanted connection. But he wasn't ready for that level of honesty, so he chose comfort over growth. And now he's uncomfortable in everything he used to crave. He told himself, you were just a phase, a season, a lesson, but his soul tells a different story. One where you weren't the interruption, you were the alignment. And alignment never goes away quietly. Your memory doesn't fade, it deepens. Like roots that grow underground, unseen but unshakable. He might look fine on the surface, but inside, something is shifting. Slowly, silently, surely. He wonders if he'll ever get the chance to meet you again, not just in passing, but in presence. Not to redo the past, but to redeem the moment. To finally speak the words that once trembled in the back of his throat, because now he knows it wasn't you who was too much. It was him who was too hidden. You didn't overwhelm him. You revealed him. And revelation always feels like exposure before it feels like freedom. There's a weight he carries that only he can feel. Not shame, awareness. The weight of knowing he touched something sacred and couldn't hold it. And that awareness is reshaping him from the inside out. He's starting to make different choices. To listen more, to feel more, to stop running from the moments that ask him to soften. And while he may never say your name aloud, it lives quietly beneath every decision. He's not chasing replacements anymore. Because deep down, he knows nothing replaces the origin. And you weren't just a connection. You were the place where his soul remembered what wholeness feels like. And now, even in your absence, you guide him. The memory of your truth lingers like a north star. Not to shame him, but to invite him. To become someone worthy of the love that once stood in front of him without asking to be earned. You didn't need to convince him. Your presence was the proof. And now, even surrounded by noise, he finds himself searching for the silence where your voice used to echo like a prayer. He wonders if you still feel it. If your heart still remembers what his forgot. And though he tells no one, he hopes that your path might one day cross his, not to complete him, but to recognize him. You were never just part of his story. You were the part that shifted everything after. The way he sees love, the way he sees women, the way he sees himself. You were the awakening that still unfolds long after you left. Others offer attention, but not presence. Affection, but not depth. And though he smiles politely, nothing sticks. Because once you've tasted divine connection, everything else feels like background noise. And now, as the world keeps spinning, he carries you quietly. Not in longing, but in reverence. You were the one who showed him what sacred really looks. And sacred things? They never truly leave. He may never get the chance to tell you all this. But his soul is telling it every day, in the pauses, in the stillness, in the way he now prays without words, hoping the universe remembers what he couldn't say. And the universe does remember. So does your soul. That's why the energy hasn't faded, it's only shifted. And somewhere, in the divine unfolding, something is still pulling the two of you toward a deeper becoming. He thinks about the moment it all shifted, when your eyes stopped pleading and started glowing, when your love turned from softness into sovereignty. That's when he realized he didn't lose you. You stepped into who you were always meant to be. There's a certain silence that follows him now, the kind that isn't empty but full of meaning. It walks beside him like a shadow with your name, not haunting but reminding him of the standard your presence set. He doesn't speak of you, not to friends, not to family, but the way he listens when they talk about love has changed. He knows now that most people haven't met someone like you, and he did. That truth doesn't let him rest. When he smiles at others, he checks his own heart, wondering why it doesn't stretch the same way it used to. Why nothing they do quite reaches the part of him that you once touched without even trying. It's not that he wants to rewind. He wants to redeem, to rewrite not the story but the way he showed up in it. Because the more he grows, the more he understands. You weren't demanding. You were divine preparation. Sometimes, in the middle of an ordinary day, your name rushes through his thoughts like a gust of wind, and suddenly he's back there, face to face with the woman who carried truth in her voice and eternity in her eyes. He can't explain to anyone how someone can be gone and still everywhere. But he knows, because when the lights go out and the world goes quiet, you're the one thing that always finds him. There's a restlessness now, a need to do better, not for show, not for ego, but because of you. Because you showed him what it feels like to be seen by someone who expects nothing, except everything honest. He wonders what would happen if you crossed paths again, if you would recognize him, not by the way he looks, but by the way he's learned to hold space. Something you taught him by walking away with grace. Every woman since has felt him hesitate, measuring, comparing, retreating. They don't know they're being held up against someone who never tried to compete, someone who just was. You weren't the loudest love, but you were the clearest, the most exact, the kind that didn't beg for attention. It transformed the air around it. And once you've breathed that kind of truth, oxygen tastes different. He's starting to forgive himself, not because he's made peace, but because he wants to be the kind of man who could hold what he once dropped. That desire didn't come from shame. It came from knowing you. Sometimes he rereads old messages, not to romanticize, but to remember how you loved him in moments he didn't deserve it. He wonders what it felt like on your end, to give so much and receive so little clarity. And now he understands why you left, why you stopped explaining, why you chose your own peace over the potential of his becoming. You didn't walk away in anger. You walked away because you outgrew waiting. Still, part of him hopes the universe offers a bridge, a single chance to show up, not with speeches, but with presence, to not fix what broke, but to build something new, rooted in everything you both now understand, because he's not the same man anymore. And the more he heals, the more he sees that you were never just a moment. You were momentum. The reason he couldn't stay asleep in a life that felt safe but not sacred. You were the one who disrupted his comfort so that he could meet his calling. And now, every time he rises, part of that strength echoes with your name. You don't hear it, but heaven does. If he could say one thing, it wouldn't be, "I'm sorry." It would be, "Thank you for being the storm." He's learning that real love doesn't chase, it remembers. And lately, his soul has been remembering you in ways his mind can't fully explain. Like muscle memory from another lifetime. Like a prayer that never stopped echoing. There are moments he pauses mid-sentence, mid-thought, mid-breath, because something invisible brushes against his chest. It's not pain, it's presence. Yours. Still here, still sacred, still stirring something in him. He can't pinpoint the exact second he fell behind, but he feels it now. That gap between who he was and who he could have been beside you. It's no longer shame that visits him. It's longing, not for the past, but for alignment. Your name doesn't sting anymore. It vibrates. In the quiet, it hums like a song the universe refuses to let him forget. A melody tied not to what was lost, but to what was planted. He hears it in the rain, in the hush of early morning light, in the way strangers say things you used to whisper. Not coincidences, confirmations. You were not random. You were a spiritual awakening in human form. What no one tells him is how hard it is to forget someone who taught him how to listen, to his own soul, to signs, to silence. You turned his gaze inward without saying a word, and now everything inside him searches for you. Some nights he stands still under the stars, hoping the same sky that watches over you might carry his unspoken thoughts to wherever you are. Not to pull you back, but to say, "I see now, I truly see." He wonders if you feel the shift, if a part of your spirit still tingles when his starts to open, if you wake up with a strange warmth in your chest that wasn't there before. Because that's when he's thinking of you, and no, he doesn't speak of this to anyone. Some awakenings aren't meant to be shared aloud. Some are sacred enough to be held in the quiet hollows of a heart reborn. He notices things now, like softness in places he once saw as weakness, like stillness in moments he used to rush through. And he realizes, you were never asking him to change. You were asking him to remember who he was. It wasn't your fire that scared him. It was your reflection. You saw him clearly when he couldn't see himself. And now that he's healing, that same mirror haunts him with clarity. He's beginning to understand that real love feels like being undone and reassembled at the same time. And you were the undoing he didn't know he needed. The sacred chaos that made truth impossible to ignore. If fate were to hand him a second chance, he wouldn't rush. He would rise. Slowly, intentionally, as the man you always knew was buried beneath fear, pride, and unfinished healing. Because now, he sees that your exit wasn't abandonment. It was ascension, a sacred boundary, a line drawn by someone who knew her worth. And he honors that now. He holds it like a compass. Sometimes he imagines your life without him, and it humbles him. Not in a jealous way, but in reverence. Because watching you rise in his absence showed him what true grace looks like in motion. He prays for you in ways he never did before. Not out of guilt, but out of deep soul respect. Because he knows that a woman like you was never just his. You were borrowed from the divine. And even if he never gets to walk beside you again, he now walks because of you. Every choice he makes with integrity. Every moment he chooses presence over avoidance. He hears your silent guidance. This isn't about getting you back. This is about becoming someone who finally deserved you. And whether you cross paths again or not, you already fulfilled your mission. You called his soul to attention. You were not the storm that ruined him. You were the wind that moved him, the lightning that lit the path, the flood that washed away the illusion, and the calm he now seeks in every breath, and he will never love Maul again. Because once you've been loved by a woman who carries galaxies in her spirit, anything less than a soul-deep connection feels empty. You changed his definition of forever. Thank you, beloved soul, for opening your heart to this message. If something in these words stirred your spirit, then know this wasn't just a coincidence. It was divine timing. You were meant to hear this right now. To confirm you've received this message, comment below with, "I can do all things through him who strengthens me." That will let the heavens know you're aligned, aware, and awakened. And if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next messages the angels are preparing just for you. Each one comes with divine purpose, and your soul knows when it's time. Stay open, stay faithful, stay watching. The next message may be the one your heart has been waiting for.